Welcome back, Bartonella buddies. I want to tell you everything I've learned about my stomach so far, but before I do that, I want to say two things. The first thing is that this is just my experience, but maybe if you're having problems with your stomach and MCAS, you might glean some information. And number two, when I say stomach, I mean stomach. Lots of people say they have stomach issues, but they mean that they actually have issues. There is an organ and it's called your stomach. If you're having diarrhea, constipation, you probably shouldn't say you're having stomach issues. I know you might be embarrassed, or it might be a vestige of polite society, but we are all adults here. I have gotten very comfortable with saying that I have diarrhea because throughout my whole life, I'd had a lot of diarrhea. I've had diarrhea on first dates. I've had diarrhea at my high school graduation dinner. Fun fact, when I was 12, I was in the opening act of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. I had diarrhea right before I lined up to go do our song and dance. So now that we've gotten proper anatomy out of the way, I'd like to first give you some background on my stomach issues. In the middle of August 2018, that's when I became unable to stand on my feet for more than 15 minutes a day. And at the end of October 2018 began all of my food intolerances. I seemingly developed intolerances to about half of all foods that existed overnight. The functional medicine doctor I had been seeing at the time suggested I go on a low histamine diet, and that helped immensely. He also suggested the supplement called HistDAO, which stands for diamine oxidase, and it's an enzyme that your body naturally produces to degrade dietary histamine. I then read Dr. Afrin's book and started on my quest of getting my MCAS under control. So let's talk about H1 and H2 blockers. And even though 1 comes before 2, let's start with H2 blockers because we are talking about the stomach. For those of you who don't know, H in the H2 stands for histamine, and they block histamine at the H2 receptor. H2 blockers are a type of antacid, and the reason they work as an antacid is because histamine in the stomach produces gastric acid. I started off with 1 Zantac a day, and then I went to 2 Zantacs a day, and I started to have worse and worse stomach issues. Specifically, I was having burping, belching, nausea, pain. At this time, we had seen a nutritionist at one of my doctor's offices, and she said that Zantac or any other H2 blocker, when taken in excess, can actually raise the pH of your stomach so that you don't have enough stomach acid, and then food can sit in your stomach for quite a while undigested, which is a problem in and of itself, but it also can irritate an already inflamed stomach. And at this time, we cut back on my Zantac because I still needed it, but the reduced dose was very helpful. It's sometimes very hard to determine with your stomach whether you have too much stomach acid or too little stomach acid. As a rule of thumb, and this is a generalization, most MCAS patients have too much stomach acid, and that's why H2 blockers are helpful. But you'll need to find the correct balance between using your H2 blocker, but also having enough stomach acid to digest your food. When Zantac was recalled, I switched over to Pepcid, and this is another little thing you might learn from. It does behoove, I said that correctly. I used to think it was behove, like hooves, like a fawn has hooves. Why did I choose a fawn? It's a mythical creature.
It is? I thought fawns were like baby deer or something.
We're gonna Merriam-Webster it. F-A-U-N. Fawn. A figure in Roman mythology similar to, but gentler than... Oh. F-A-W-N.
Swipe up
this
now
is an ad.
to install the Grammarly keyboard.
No.
Swipe up now to install the Grammarly keyboard.
Wow, I already said no, right?
Swipe up now. Swipe up now. Swipe up now. Swipe up now to...
Oh my god. Okay, fawn. Noun. A young deer. It would really behoove you to figure out which H2 blocker and which H1 blocker works best for you, because these really do form the foundation for many MCAS, if not most MCAS patients. It forms the foundation for their treatment. So when I switched from Zantac to Pepcid, Pepcid worked better for me than Zantac ever did. It would also behoove you to play around with the dosage and timing of your H2 blockers and your H1 blockers. I have 20 milligram Pepcid pills, and I take half a pill, which is 10 milligrams, before each of my 5 or 6 small meals a day. I think this works better for me because it kind of keeps a steady state of the H2 blocker in my bloodstream. So now let's talk about H1s. H1s are what we typically think of when we think of antihistamines. I started off with Zyrtec because that's what I would take for my normal everyday sort of allergies. That was helpful. I then tried to go to 2 Zyrtecs a day, and that made me extremely constipated. But then I started reading the MCAS groups, and I saw that so many people take for their rescue meds when they are having anaphylaxis or a really bad flare, they take Benadryl. And I was like, maybe I should try Benadryl. Not only do I find Benadryl much more effective for stopping the belching, but I also find that it reduces the stomach pain. And as a bonus, it helps my bodily pain and nerve pain, which I think is kind of funny because isn't all pain nerve pain? So I'm not saying that you should try Benadryl, but I am saying that you should spend the time trying different H1 blockers to see which one is more effective for you and your symptoms. So now let's talk about constipation. And you're like, wait a minute, Jake, you just spent all that time on upper GI versus lower GI. But constipation can actually make your stomach issues worse. Why, you might ask? Well, I was telling my doctor when I was trying to figure out why does constipation make my stomach hurt, and he was like, well, the transverse colon goes up and over your abdomen, which is right below the stomach, and I guess it can push up on your stomach and make your GERD worse. And then beyond constipation, I can still be going pretty regularly, but still have that whole pushing up on the stomach issue from my intestines, just because the H1 antihistamines, especially at the dosage I'm on, is so dehydrating that my poop, even though I am going, the poop that's in there is quite hard. It's not malleable in my, what would I call this? My bell? Okay, in my bell. So I call this phenomenon being constipated while not being constipated. A similar phenomenon that happens to me is I can get bloating and or edema, and edema is tissue swelling caused by trapped excess fluid. And both the bloating and the edema happen below my belly button and can also push up on my stomach and can cause the belching, the reflux, the GERD. So here is a pic of me bloated next to a picture of me not bloated. Oh, I should tell you guys about the poop scale. I am obsessed with the poop scale. Okay, it's called the Bristol stool chart. So there are 7 types, and you want to be at a 3 or 4. On number 1 are separate hard lumps like nuts, and it's hard to pass. Number 2 is number 2. We're talking about number 2. Okay, type 2, sausage-shaped but lumpy. Type 3, sausage-shaped but with cracks on the surface, so that's a good one. Type 4, sausage or snake-like, soft and smooth. And then type 5, 6, and 7 is where we're getting into diarrhea. Type 5, soft blobs with clear-cut edges, easy to pass. Type 6, fluffy pieces with ragged edges, mushy. Ugh. Type 7, watery, no solid pieces, entirely liquid. That's when you say I peed out of my butt. Okay, so where was I? I can belch when my stomach is too empty, and that might be like duh to you, but one person's duh is another person's not duh. And so when my stomach gets too empty, it's inflamed in there, and it almost feels like my stomach's eating itself. Oh, and another thing I have to figure out what's happening is, so I take Valium for my nerve pain. I'm not on a very high dose, but when I go up on that dose because I'm having increased nerve pain, higher doses of Valium for me relax. Well, this is what I think is happening. I'm not exactly sure, but my best hypothesis is that it relaxes the lower esophageal sphincter, which can cause things to backflow that I don't want backflowing. So that's another thing that may or may not help you. So when I am belching, I have to figure out, Did I not take enough Pepsid? Did I take too much Pepsid? Am I constipated? Am I having that constipated but not actually constipated sort of constipation? Am I having bloating? Am I having edema? Did I take too much Valium? Is my stomach empty? Or some combination of those things. Piper, what do you do when your stomach hurts? I eat lots of grass and then I throw up on my mom's bed. Oh, I should try that. And what do you want everyone watching to do? Subscribe, please. Bye, Bartonella buddies. Stomach all the way down to my poopy hole. I'm not saying